Hi, everybody. This is Rebecca over 60 and babyboomster.com. That's my blog. And today I'm interviewing best-selling author Rebecca Faye Smith Galli. And she's experienced some of life's most difficult challenges, such as sibling loss, special needs children, and paralysis. You can imagine she's got a lot to give us in terms of dealing with challenges. She has a new book out called Morning Fuel: Daily Inspirations to Stretch Your Mind Before Starting Your Day. So I'm really excited to have you here, Rebecca. We're both Rebeccas. I've had a lot of Rebeccas lately. And anyway, thank you for coming on the call.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So tell me a little bit about your experience and what led up to writing your book.
Well, it's been a journey. My first book was called Rethinking Possible, and that one took me 20 years to write. Life kept happening. I was first paralyzed. It was very quick, 6 hours. It's a transverse myelitis, happens to 1 in a million people. Just
Wow.
been divorced 9 days, had 4 children, ages 3, 4, 6, and 9. So it was a crazy, crazy time. And I was in sales and marketing before. And so when all of a sudden I couldn't be out and about anymore, I really missed connecting with people. And this was back in 1997 when the internet was just becoming, there wasn't blogs or social media or any of that stuff, barely the internet. A friend of mine read about me. My father had a column in the paper, and he read about my paralysis and said, is that you? So I responded to him, and he was a quick email person. By the time I finished it, he'd practically written a response.
Mm-hmm.
So we went back and forth and really recounted my life because he hadn't seen me in 20 years. He was a high school buddy, and I was in my, late 30s. So
Yeah.
anyway, that was the beginning of writing. And then the book came out. And then after the book came out, people said, like, how do you keep going? And reading daily is something I do as a practice, a daily reading in the morning. And so I decided to write my second book with these daily readings. So they're short readings every morning or whenever you need a little pick me up. So kind of made what I enjoy.
Yeah, I like the idea of that, of having a short thing to read in the morning, because people don't always have time to read something that's long to get motivated. But if you just have something, some little piece of inspiration, that's really amazing.
Thank you. I read it, and they wound up being little stories that sometimes my dad had told me, or grandparent had told me, stories I kind of want my kids to remember too. If the
Mhm.
kids they forget. So this one has, but they all have a little bit of a message to them.
That's some really tough stuff to go through. I know everybody goes through stuff. I mean, I lost two guys to cancer and a brother also, but to have the paralysis on top of it, that makes things so much harder, especially with 4 kids. Like, how did you deal with that?
Well, fortunately, I had a lot of help. I was well supported. My ex-husband was supportive then and is still now. And so we've been worked hard at that relationship. And I think that's been a big thing to be able to have a lot of people supporting you. That's one of my strategies is like when you're going through something tough, if you're going through stormy weather, who's in your boat? And like
Yeah.
who is there to support you? And so I still talk to my sister every morning. We Snapchat each other, and then we have a little conversation every morning. And I've developed quite a good base of friends in the area. So I think the hardest thing is to do things alone or feel you're alone, that nobody understands. So
Hmm.
I think that's really important to get a good support system.
Yeah, I can imagine. Some of the material that I was given was how to set your day up for success. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Part of my day is, I try to get up and have my lemon water. I've heard that's good for a lot of things. I have that, and then I have coffee, and then I do my readings, my morning readings. And so I'll read 2 or 3 things to kind of get inspired, and then I do some journaling. And
Hmm.
I've learned that, especially when my life can kind of be up and down from my waist down, I call that my 2-year-old because she is very unpredictable sometimes, and I'm never sure exactly what kind of day we're going to have together. And
Yeah.
so part of my journal, I actually divided into little sections. And the first thing I write about is how's my body doing today? How is she doing? And the good news about that is it's now that it's on paper, I can kind of look back and say, well, day before I didn't have that, or I've made progress in this. And
Mhm.
so it's a good kind of record of that. And then I talk a little bit about my life and what I did, and then I talk about my mood. I think it's
Mhm.
important to kind of check in with yourself about what your mood is like. And I try to set some goals for the day and then give myself affirmations about the accomplishments I had from the previous day goal, give myself credit for that.
Mhm.
And I try to come up with at least 3 things I'm grateful for. Start my day, kick it off right.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Having gratitude is a really powerful thing, I think.
Yes, I think it's one of the ways it's kind of our one of our superpowers. If we can take a situation and still be grateful for something that's within that situation, it automatically changes your perspective. It's just a very big perspective shift. It's not always the easiest thing to do, especially if you're in the pit.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's where the evidence comes back in my journal. I can go back and say, well, I had this before. How did I handle that? And how long did it take to get over it?
Yeah, I think people respond to challenges in so many different ways, and I think that if you have a positive attitude about it, it can really help you to get through it.
I
Yeah.
agree. Absolutely. A lot of that is a choice too.
Mhm.
It's what lens do you want to look through? Do
Yeah.
I want to see the negative in it, or do I choose to see the positive in it? And sometimes that's not easy, but I think
Yeah.
it's like working out. It's a muscle you can develop by consciously looking for the positive.
Yeah. So on top of all this, you also had a special needs child too to deal with. What was
Yeah,
that like?
I had two. My oldest son had epilepsy and a
Oh,
degenerative disease, and I lost him at age 15.
oh
Um,
no.
and then my daughter, who is my second daughter, Madison, has autism, and she's pretty limited, and she can't read or write or ever be left alone. She's physically fine. She just doesn't have a lot of the communication skills that she needs to be on her own. So with Madison early on, and again, this is back in again, before we had the internet and the Googles and that kind of thing. Madison was in a program for the summer, and she brought home a little yellow flyer in her backpack, letting me know of another parent who was willing to share some therapies that was helping her child learn how to talk.
Mhm.
And so we went to that parent meeting and discovered this therapy that I hadn't learned about from a doctor or an educator. I learned about it from another parent. And because of that interaction, we decided to create a little nonprofit called Pathfinders, helping
Mm.
parents find the path for autism. And so
Yeah.
that was created, it'll be 25 years next year. It's been going, and we serve like 20,000 people each year now.
Wow,
So
that's quite an accomplishment. That's
yeah,
great.
well, thank you. Thank you. We've got great staff. I realized, who was in my boat. We didn't have a lot of people in the boat then. And so when a parent turns out to be a helpful person, it's like, well, let's expand the boat, and see who
Yeah.
parents could offer things that other parents could use for their children. So that was really a successful endeavor. It was hard at the time, but
Yeah.
it's something I'm glad that we were able to do.
Does she still live with you?
No, she's in a group home. After my paralysis, I had caregivers come in pretty much for 4 years, 24/7.
Hmm.
And then her behaviors became such that we needed to get more intensive care that I could give her or that I
Yeah.
could home. So she's in a group home and in a day program, and she's doing really well with that. She enjoys it. She's not too far away, so I get to see her periodically for lunch and outings.
Oh, that's good. That's really
Yeah.
good. So how do you find, with all of this going on, how have you found a like a purposeful life? What are things that besides, I mean, that's a really an amazing thing that you just were telling me about with, creating an organization.
I think that's really important to feel like that you're always moving towards something. I think that I've enjoyed the writing quite a bit. And so for a time I wrote for the Baltimore Sun, some op-ed pieces, and then a local weekly that I did once a month column called From Where I Sit.
Hmm.
And I enjoyed that for about 12 years. And then now I do Thoughtful Thursdays. And every Thursday I come out with a column of what's inspired me to stay positive that week. I had a writing professor one time that asked us, if you're writing, you need to know why you write. What is it that you write about? And I came up with, I believe that life can be good no matter what. And so if I believe that, what evidence have I seen that week of that? And that's what I usually write about. So it's not that life can be the best.
Hmm.
I'd rather not be paralyzed. I don't enjoy being paralyzed. I don't know why I was paralyzed. There's no cause, no cure for that, or my son's epilepsy, or my daughter's autism. And sometimes we
Yeah.
just have to live with these questions. I think it gives me purpose to be able to write that and then be able to share it. And once you share it and you get feedback, it's that connection that is really important, especially since my life isn't as active as I wish it could be, because there are limits from the
Yeah.
wheelchair.
I'm sure. Yeah. Can you give us some examples of what's in your book? Like, I don't know if you have it in front of you or just kind of little tidbits of what's in there.
Sure, I can. I'll tell you one of my favorites. I don't have it handy to read, but I'll tell you the story is when I was first paralyzed, I was home and I had some friends over. My folks lived 4 or 5, I don't know, about 6 hours away. They lived in West Virginia, but they would call in and they were very interested in what we were doing all the time. And I was making milkshake. Sorry, I about stole the punchline, but I was making ice cream,
Uh-huh.
the kind that you churn and churn and churn. And so I'd done everything right. The kids were helping me. And so dad called and says, so how's it going? How's your ice cream coming? And so went to look at it and I was like, Dad, it's still it's not gelled. It's not solid. And he said to me, well, you can always serve milkshakes. And I just thought of how affirming that was to me. He didn't criticize me. He didn't ask if I'd done all the directions. He didn't try to fix it. He was just dealing with what we had and making the
Yeah.
best. And that flip to positivity was just automatic with him. So it's those kind of little vignettes like that, and then some questions about, when have you, had a failure that would actually, could be a success if you looked at it the right way. And that's kind of
Mhm.
your little thought for the day.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. That's great too that he was, would have that kind of mindset too. I mean, that's so helpful when you're going through stuff like that too, to have somebody
Yeah,
that's that supportive like that.
and I think that that's something I realized when I wrote the first book is, I got to see my parents go through a very deep loss, and the loss of my brother, who was 17 years old, their only son. And I
Oh.
got to watch how they coped with that. And I think that's one of the things I learned from them was, yes, they were positive, but they were always real.
Hmm.
It hurt, and they weren't
Sure.
afraid to show that hurt, but they also showed me different ways to cope. My dad was very public about his coping, did grief lectures on grief. And my mother was very private, but was more involved in private support groups. So when you see people emulate ways of coping that are healthy, it's easier to do it yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't really realize that I was observing that, but I think that was helpful.
Yeah. I know that's a parent's worst nightmare, but
Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
happens, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is really amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think it's great too that you became a best-selling author despite all this too. I mean, that's really showing that you have put yourself together and really moved forward.
Yes, it was, like I said, the first book was 20 years. I had to get some education under me. It was one thing to write a column, it's another thing to write a full-length memoir.
Yeah.
And I was able to take a couple programs and get some coaching and some editors. But you know, I think that's another one of those things that can be a real positive, is to keep learning and
Mm-hmm.
to keep stretching yourself in ways that you haven't considered as, I was never considered myself a writer. I was a sales and marketing gal. I was with IBM for 10 years and sold big computers, and then it's like, what am I? Yeah, I never was this kind of writer. It was therapeutic to write, I think, and it's actually, surprisingly, it's been helpful for other people to see a situation that was difficult and to be able to connect with somebody, and they, I've gotten emails and social media kinds of stuff now that it's helpful to them. And if I can use this crazy life of mine to be helpful to somebody else, I really cherish that, and that is very much something that gives me purpose, to be able to
Yeah.
write about something that could help others.
Yeah, I love that too. That's wonderful. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. It was great to spend time with you.